Esu architektas Rimas Grigas, valdovų rūmų projekto vadovas.
The leader
Nuo
of the
1994
Palace of the
metų teko
Kings,
garbė
project
ir
leader,
atsakomybė
and since 2004
svarbaus
I've been given this responsibility and the honor of preparation of this project, which is so important for Lithuania.
esam paruošę Lietuvos sinagogos atkūrimo
And at the
projektą.
moment we have prepared the project for the realization of
Noriu pasakyti keletą faktų, daug nesiplėsiu, nes labai mažai laiko.
the project of Litus synagogue restoration.
1520
In 1534, the king of Lithuania started to build a new palace. Before that, there had been former buildings there as well, older buildings. And here you can see the size of the palace in this zone. This is the lower palace, the lower castle rather, also the upper castle, the arsenal. And now the reconstructed building is the half of the whole complex. Now we don't have this part. This is the National Museum. And in 1791, in 1801, the Russian Empire administration ordered the destruction of this whole palace. You see the archcathedral, the upper castle, and the castle was erected here in the whole territory. The old Jewish cemetery was also annihilated, and in the park all the installation was put in place. And compared to the synagogue, the great synagogue, the palace as it was built in 1535 remained less of the ruins than the great synagogue. The great synagogue lived much longer before its destruction. Some history of reconstruction. In 1983, the reconstruction project was proposed in order to convert it into a national art gallery. It was not realistic at the time, and the project didn't have any progress. And later, at this house of Schlossberg, the National French Museum was proposed to be established, and then the archaeological excavation was started at the site. In 1988, when the idea of reconstruction of the palace emerged, the research was started in order to accumulate the material for the reconstruction of the palace. And the remains of the underground parts of the building were excavated, and a very large educational work was being done, and it was called Vilnius Pompeii. That was very impressive to the community and residents of Vilnius. It became a part of life in Vilnius, and then archaeological excavation became more intensive, and it continued during the next 20 years, and more than 300,000 various artifacts been accumulated. And the whole collection actually belongs to the group of architectural artifacts and ceramic and metal pieces. And then we created retrospectives of the construction of the whole palace. And here, in black color, you can see the pre-Gothic remains of the castle that are outside the perimeter, and the black color represents the Gothic remains, and the Renaissance part is the white part of it. And we collected also historical data and made the inventory of all the finds excavated here, and that helped us in the progress of the project. Of course, there were difficulties. In terms of the research being made in the process, and even today we don't have all the artifacts in inventory and clearly understood. And here you can see the scheme when some excavated artifacts were left there for future generations. Not all of it was investigated and excavated.
Bet kadangi vis tiktais laikinas rūmų liekanų uždengimas negalėjo apsaugoti nuo temperatūros svyravimo ir grunto drėgmės.
However, it was difficult to preserve the remains from the weather. We had to create a relevant climate there so that we were able to really make the exposition, proper exposition of the remaining ruins. In 1994, the tender was announced for the concept, and the main conditions were formulated there. And I will come back again. And we'll show this plan now. At that time, we also came to understand that we need to make the exposition of and display of these remains to cover it. And we can see the zones here where we wanted to cover it for further display. And my team presented the concept, and it won the tender and proceeded with the project. And the concept means that we have to create it on the iconographic data and the research that has been made
Pastato kiemo fasadai, apie kuriuos nėra duomenų, projektuojami labiau sąlyginiai.
And then the courtyard facades are very relative, and the rest of the building to be reconstructed should house the museum and also with the display of the protected remains underground, under the glass, to protect it from the weather impact. And hot discussions started, different programs were prepared, but there was no proper financing. In year 2000, a law was adopted. In 2001, the government approved the final concept of the recreation of the palace, and political decision was made to recreate this palace by 2009 in commemoration of a millennia of the name of Lithuania. And we made the project of the strengthening of foundation, and in 2002 we started the real reconstruction work. And here you can see the picture from the Cathedral Square right before the reconstruction of the palace. At that time, in 2002, we started the removal of the angars. The remains underground were protected by certain cover in order to protect them from destruction. And you can see the cranes already that started the removal of the angars, and the southern part was started to be reconstructed. An interesting fact was at the beginning of the construction, people were coming here to see on special lookout temporary sites. And here you can see the then President Algirdas Brazauskas said he was the curator of the construction, and he was great help for us in moral terms, and he provided great support. This is how we started the reconstruction of whole idea and protected the remains of this palace. And this is an interesting plan, blueprint of 1787, where we can see the reconstructed cathedral, the constructed cathedral, which was done by architect Stoko Gucevičius. And the opponents who were against the recreation of the palace said that these buildings never stood side by side, because when the palace was there, there was no classical cathedral. But when the classical cathedral came into being, the palace was distracted. But when we found this plan, all these questions disappeared and were not an obstacle for further work. On the basis of the main rules and concepts of heritage and on the experience of neighboring countries in this respect, and in sight of the exclusivity of the object, we had 7 principles that we have to follow. First one was the recreation of the palace as a lost chain in the whole complex of this territory. And by size, the palace is very similar to the reconstructed palace, King's Palace in Warsaw, or the palace in Krakow. So basically, the question was why it's twice smaller in size than in Krakow and Warsaw. And historians actually found out that a part of the buildings have not remained here, and when we look at the St. Barbara Church, we can see that all these buildings were in one system. You could go through the corridor from St. Barbara's Church to St. Casimir's Chapel. So we were not able to create these connections. Maybe it's for the future generations again. Next, we know from iconographic material that we have certain fragments of the exterior and interior of the palace, and this is a material that was the basis for recreation of the palace. These artifacts are not numerous, but they give us an understanding of the character of the palace. And these are the sepias of Stoko Gucevičius, which show that this is the building of mannerism. And this is from the other side. This is the northern part, and this is a drawing of Pietro de Rossi that was done when the palace was still in place. And there is other paintings also, but this was done from the original site. And then we had an idea, like you can see it here, what kind of facades we were able to recreate from iconographic material, and the decision was made that these external facades have to be recreated and the courtyard inner facades have to be interpreted according to the finds on the site. Maybe you cannot see it clearly here. However, we wanted the inner courtyard facades made from stone, but anyway, if you look at them on a sunny day, you can see that inside facades are more or less smooth, and you can clearly see where the iconographic facades are in place and which one are interpreted. And here we used another method because we had really a lot of stone artifacts, and we made a number of tours around Europe to neighboring countries and have taken on their experience of the method to be applied. So you can see the fragment of it. So all the parts made in stone are based on the stone artifacts, and this stone is taken here from the Gotland island, from the original sources. And we managed to do that by some curious way. And this is the scheme of the facilities inside, and this is how we did. From the Schlossberg part of the building, as we call it, we had the authentic basement that we excavated, and the niches and the remains of the cellar, and on the basement, as you can see it here on the cartogram, We have the junctions to the Art Cathedral, and we can see the level of the second floor with relationship to the Kazimierz Chapel, St. Kazimierz Chapel. And the walls and the arches have their own diameter, and we put it together and we have this type of structure. And this is the constructive decision and solution is the idea that when you go to the basement, you can see really the height of the facade. Well, originally you can go here and see for yourself. And we made a computer model of this part of the building to recreate the heights in accordance with the plan of the basement and the sepia. And then we created this type of facade, and we were really very glad that according to the heights of the floors, it really played very well with the heights of the St. Kazimierz Chapel of the Cathedral. And actually that the only authentic part of the building is St. Kazimierz Chapel, because the Archcathedral was turned into classical style of building. And the chapel basically was built here in 1610 as the main chapel for the king. That's why we had these junctions, and the architecture was actually matched the king's palace. An interesting point is that the chapel was matched to the palace, then the palace vanished, and then the cathedral was reconstructed, and we built the palace again. That was an interesting point in history. Number 3. The recreation of the facade without iconographic material was based on other original remains and also the known iconographic material somewhere else in similar buildings. So, with a little time left, I can tell very shortly, and we can see that all the building nearly floats in the air, so we had to make a very light construction solutions here. So basically, some of the walls are empty. Just for the construction purposes, we needed to save a lot of weight. Now the recreation of the facilities inside that were similar to the original facilities, and the halls of the palace on different floors. And I can shortly say we were thinking a lot about that. We actually established the archaeological museum here, as we call it, where you can see under the glass covering the remaining uncovered lower parts of the walls and foundations. And all this part is like one big open space. And we can see on the plan that this is really like a big factory with the cafeterias, these archaeological displays and all kind of engineering installations. So it's basically a very complex mechanism because we planned about 5,000 visitors per day maximum, and on the ground floor we can see also the spaces that are dedicated for the tourist purposes, and you can see the second and third floor, which are meant for the historic interiors that were reconstructed, and in the attic we have the administration. And also there was the reconstruction of the authentic material of the furnaces, and we can see how it was recreated, and the display of these remains was done also interesting. We used the experience of the neighboring countries, and these are popular solutions, and we actually exploited it here in the displays of the authentic remains that were uncovered. We can see it all here in the basement in the southern part of the complex. On the ground level, you can also see this window above, also the windows that can provide light for the displays on the ground floor, and also the visual connections with the basement, with the different parts of supports, and we use glass where it is possible, and some of the arches had to be restored with new bricks. And here you can clearly see how much of authentic material remained and how thick the walls were, and basically how these arches were restored as well. And was a problem with the house of the Schlossbergs, which was built in classical style, with its interior details, and the problem was how to incorporate it into the whole palace complex. And here you can see how it was done, and there was a huge discussion, so we managed to preserve certain authentic parts. And the idea was also to cover the inside court with the glass roof, but it was too expensive to construct. And finally, and just shortly give you the historic pictures since 2001, and this is how it progressed in the reconstruction. This is what it looks like from the square side. So thank you again for inviting me. And one final important point, that in 2006, the president of ICOMA, Mikhail Peset, just praised very much this reconstruction and congratulated us on the result. And as he said, that these solutions actually represent the reconstruction idea. So we're really happy that this synagogue case has been started with this conference, and I wish you really to have patience And as one of presenters said yesterday,
užsispyrimo.
and also resilience in all your work. And yesterday also on the when I heard that Litvaks are so resilient, I think that's because the Lithuanians are so resilient. I believe that in its due time, synagogue will be in place. We are looking forward to it. Thank you.